You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
Termina هناك لشوارزنيجر.
Va a pegarle Ronaldinho Gaucho. Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! 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 ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
Rise up, Rain City. Rise up, Rain City. That's the worst hashtag on earth, by the way, but it is only 50 days until the Vancouver Whitecaps take on the New York Red Bulls in CONCACAF Champions League quarterfinal action. Kevin Laramee, how are you?
50 days. I'm pretty good. 50 days until the CCL starts. Not even 21 until the Montreal Impact open their training camp on January 24th. A lot of things are, we talk about the offseason, and we kind of not even have one this season.
Yeah. I mean, the Impact did have a couple weeks longer than TFC.
Fine.
Still got to sit there, but
I'll give it to you like 1 week more.
Exactly, but no, it is very odd. I'm sure LA Galaxy fans are shaking their head listening to this, going, "That's just the normal thing, guys. This is what it is." But certainly, new experience for us up here, and we of course focus on the Canadian teams a little bit more than the rest. So obviously, it is a bit of a stretch. Although the Whitecaps, that 50-day countdown, there's been a lot of countdown before that, so they've had quite the long off season. They of course did not make the Major League Soccer playoffs.
They had a countdown
that's
till
not
the
what
end
we're
of
here
the
talking
season.
about today. They hit the 100-day too, I think, as well, Kevin. I think that we'll move aside from that and hit a few bits and bytes to start the show before we get into a 2017 prediction show. News is a little thin in the early days of January, but nonetheless, we'll keep cranking these out here. NYCFC yesterday, we talked about Andrea Pirlo and the possibility of him retiring. There was a rumor coming out of the Italian press that did not pass yesterday, and NYCFC did in fact deny that today. As I said yesterday, Kevin, and I'll let you quickly jump in after this. I'm not sure whether they want to deny that. I think that they should be encouraging that, but that's just me. Great, brilliant player that we've all enjoyed watching, but the end always comes.
I'm not sure that Pirlo would tell them before. That's the question. Would Pirlo take the time to be like, okay, New York, I'm thinking about... No, he's on the beach. He's playing soccer with the son, and that's what we've seen lately on his Instagram. So, yeah, Pirlo still looking, if you ask us, like he's going to step away from the game in 2017. Maybe that's the first prediction of today, Duane. Pirlo retires.
In 2017, yeah. Well, certainly you mentioned the Instagram, and that I'm pretty sure that NYCFC will be releasing the press release in reaction to the Instagram photo that Pirlo, posts of his like boots sitting alone on a beach. Like that's how he's going to announce his retirement, which has become the thing to do in today's day and age. So, nonetheless, but speaking of old Italians, Buffon,
nice segue.
Thanks. Named the Italian Player of the Year. Kevin, is he actually a vampire?
Is he Dracula, Nosferatu? Is he like 200 years old and just doesn't age? Benjamin Button. So maybe it should be Gianluigi Buffon instead of Buffon, maybe. But he does get better with age, just like an Italian wine. And he seems to be willing to go up until the next World Cup cycle. That seems to be his goal, to go represent the Squadra Azzurri one more time at the highest level of the international game. Gianluigi Buffon, Player of the Year in Serie A. That's kind of fascinating when you look at it. He's the oldest player in Serie A as well.
Yeah, I think that there might be a bit of there's a lot of brilliant players in Serie A. There's a lot of brilliant players in Juve. So obviously he could do that. But, Buffon, he does get better with age. I mean, and you can't, like I said before, it's the same with with Pirlo is I'm not an Azzurri fan. I'm not Italian descent, so why would I be? But I've always respected the Italian national team. I've always had a bit of thing for the Italian culture, actually, I'll fully admit. But nonetheless, I'm not a fan. But I've always respected these guys, and it's because they age so gracefully, and they're just so damn cool. Like, they're just so damn cool. Like, I just wish I could be them, and I really, maybe I'm man crushing here. That's probably uncomfortable. We should probably move on.
Yeah,
Long
no,
pause.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's interesting. Let's continue a little bit here on the Italian side of things. We talked about it last week, but Panagionis Kone, a Greek midfielder that plays for Udinese, is even more linked to the Montreal Impact, and according to multiple sources, but it firstly appeared last week on Tutto Mercato Web, apparently he's actually getting ready to sign with the Impact this week. By the end of the week, we should have confirmation about the midfielder of Udinese, Panagionis Kone, signing with the Impact. A lot of people saying, oh, does that mean that Zimali is not going to come in June? No. I think it's a type of move for the depth, for more attacking options for the Impact. You will have Zimali there, Kone as well, and I think it's the beginning of the post-Piatti era buildup for the Montreal Impact for their roster, and I think Kone is one of the first pieces to answer that question. He can play left midfielder, attacking left midfielder like Piatti likes to play. So Kone, I think, is one of the first piece to maybe prepare not just 2017, but 2018 and onwards for the Montreal Impact.
Yeah, I said the other day that when you're talking about Udinese, it's a club that has produced a lot of players, and they tend to move them on. So it's not the worst place to go shopping. So that's a general conversation, a general thought about that potential signing, but certainly that type of signing seems like a good place to shop, a smart place to shop, Kevin.
Yep, exactly. So that will be very interesting. And another big name that's been linked to, it seems the last few days, when every player coming out of Italy is either linked with the Impact, TFC, or some of the clubs in Major League Soccer. Rossi actually linked with Major League Soccer as well now.
Yeah, it's the Giovinco thing, and all sports leagues are a bit copycat, but when Giovinco came, he was probably maybe the first big star to come and be of Italian descent, and now we've seen a lot more come through and are sort of being linked there, and that just potentially means that they've had their eyes open to the potential of the league, and now it's another market to go in there. And I think that you can get the Italian player. Not that these guys are coming in cheap, but I think a player of similar stature that is English, that has a bit of a Cockney accent, say, probably would cost you more. So, and generally speaking, doesn't adapt as well to leaving the home country. So, maybe Italian is the new normal for bringing in big Euros, and I'm okay with that. I think most of us would be okay with that, because I don't necessarily agree that the English stars that come in necessarily always make the impact that they matter to. Yeah, no pun intended.
The first one of 2017. But we talked about this before last year. Well, not last week, last year, when we talk about Serie A and how Serie A and even Serie B, or if you're a French player of Serie A, how the style of play that you're used to playing in Italy, it actually is there's a correlation between success over there or lack of success over there, but just the style that you are playing with the success in Major League Soccer, how the game is played in Major League Soccer. It has come a long way in the last few years, where unfortunately it's not necessarily the best news, but Serie A has gone down a little bit in quality of quote unquote football, or it's not as much as about a technical and tactical as it used to be, but athleticism and physical aspect of the football game has risen up in Serie A, and that is very relatable to Major League Soccer. If you're able to do well in Serie A and not necessarily always take that 2-3 seconds before attacking the ball carrier like we do see in England and in other leagues in Europe, Serie A is closer to how the game unfolds in Major League Soccer, and we do see a lot. There's a few examples of success. We're talking about the Mancosu, the Giovincos. It's different level, but you're talking about players coming in the prime of their career, having immediate impact and influence with their team in Major League Soccer. I think we're going to see more and more from Serie A and eventually other leagues coming into Major League Soccer.
Well, that'd be good. And, the other thing we touched on as a joke with the vampire comments is that the Italian players, for whatever reason, tend to be able to play later in life. I don't know why that is.
So are you saying that eating carbs all the time and drinking wine all the time actually helps you live longer? Yeah, I got to talk to my nutritionist.
Yeah, that would be a nice life, man. I love carbs. God, I love carbs.
I could bathe in carbs every single day, Dwayne.
Yeah. Yeah, just bread. Just feed me bread. This is getting a bit weird now. So we'll move
Bread,
on.
bread and beer. Bread and beer. That's probably like the ultimate diet.
It's it sounds like a bad college band. Bread and beer.
Actually,
all
sounds
right,
like a good college band. I'd go see them.
There you go. Let's move on. The Missouri governor, I don't have his name written down here, so I don't, because I'm not in Missouri and I don't really care what his name is. But nonetheless, he's pretty adamant. There's a conversation going on around St. Louis as it relates to Major League Soccer that there will be no public money being spent, period. And a story on stadiums moving forward that probably relates to the fact that they just had their heart ripped out of their soul by having a football team taken from them.
And a lot of money, too, because they actually did put some government money inside that St. Louis stadium back in the 90s when they opened that greatest show on turf. So a lot of history in St. Louis. And it's not just about soccer, Dwayne. It's literally every sport. The governor of Missouri mentioned that the state will not help any sports team build infrastructures in the near future. And that is maybe a blow for St. Louis because let's face it, every expansion bid for the ongoing process to go to 24 to 28 in the next few years. The first expansion bid process ends January 31st. It's the first deadline. The bids have to be in by the end of this month. And that, by the governor of Missouri, does not help St. Louis build a attractive bid when you have Sacramento and other places that actually are having support and financial support from the governments and different level of governments heading into that bid January 31st.
Yeah, and look, this is a trend that we've seen for the most part in the country that Kevin and I are in for a while, where the government has refused to support any stadium builds that are outside of university campuses. That's the kind of the rule that the Tories before the current Liberal government had put in and still is maintained. That's federal support. We're a different system, but nonetheless, that's kind of how it's worked up here. So we're kind of used to that. Certainly the last major build in the city that I'm in was entirely privately financed. And, I think that's kind of the important thing to do. I think what governments can do to help these builds out is to, maybe find land and help them in that way and not gouge them on tax rates.
Yeah.
But that's,
or just if, like we have seen, $1 donation for the entire land, or we have seen those things happen over the last few years. But even if you go back to Montreal, Dwayne, I don't want to bring it always back to my neck of the woods, but the Stade Saputo in 2008, it was entirely built with Joey Saputo's money. Yeah, when it had the renovation and the reopening for 2012, it did have some help with the local and provincial and federal government, but mainly it was private funds, like the majority of it.
Sorry, I should take a step back from Toronto. When I said the last major build, I was thinking of the ACC, and of course, that's kind of ironic coming from me because BMO Field did get some private funding, but it was tied into the public funding. It was tied into the under 17 or under 20 World Cup that was taking place,
and it was with the condition. It was a condition that it would be the Canadian National Soccer Stadium, which is the actual name of the BMO Field. But you're right.
Yeah, exactly. So, but nonetheless, it's a new trend, and certainly when as it relates to Major League Soccer and the expansion bids, they're going to have to find private funding if you're going to make these things happen, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I do, I have a little bit more nuanced thinking in terms of stadium builds. I am not black and white like most people on them, and I think there is benefit to the public that goes beyond things you can measure with dollars and cents when you're talking about stadiums that can be part of a discussion about it. They should not dominate the discussion of it. We talked at length about this on Five Rings if you want to go back to our archives and listen to it. So that's kind of where I come down. But St. Louis, as I've said before, as a real final thought on this one, will be a slam dunk if they can get some kind of stadium plan in there. They have wanted badly into St. Louis forever. If there is an ownership group there that has legitimate money, MLS will bend over backwards. They will let them play in the empty football stadium, which will be not ideal, but they will let them play in there until they can figure the stadium out if they can get the ownership sorted out. The last one I wanted to do is the exciting news that Maximum Urruti is going to Barcelona.
Wow, a former Major League Soccer player moving on, not going to wait, Dwayne. It's Barcelona of Ecuador.
Oh, okay.
It's not as sexy, but Urruti going to Ecuador now.
Yeah, on loan with an option to buy. Apparently, Aruti's journey in Major League Soccer. You could write a 30 for 30 on it, man. That first year with Toronto, with Kevin Payne chasing him for 8 months, the TFC signs him. There's been a new change of ownership. He plays literally less than 200 minutes and gets traded after 8 months of rumors that he was coming in and going to be the savior. He's bounced around, won an MLS Cup, won a Supporters Shield, so he's had a pretty successful run in Major League Soccer, but never really was quite the player that he was promised to TFC fans. But that was something we were used to being promised a lot of things back then. So Max Maruti is just part of that, and he will be forever tied into the worst stretch in TFC history because of that strange little journey.
Yep.
All right.
That was a little bit strange, but good for you, Max, and good luck with Barcelona, Ecuador.
All right. Let's take a quick break. We're going to come back and start our predictions.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Duane. And as a new tradition now, we did this last year and we're going to do it again this year. We're going to put our wizard hat on to channel our inner Nostradamus and trying to figure out what 2017 has in store for us.
Exactly. Look, and don't save this tweet. That's an old joke, so I'm going to stop doing. I think in 2017. Don't you by all means save it if you want. But
there's no
I'm not
favorite
promising
anymore. So you
anything
can't favorite tweet, Duane. You can't just have that tweet favorite. No, you have to like it. So now let's forget about this.
Yeah, exactly. All right. The way we're going to do this is we're going to start with the 3 Canadian Major League Soccer teams, and then we'll move into the Canadian and men's. Canadian and women's. Sorry, let's try this again, Duane. The Canadian and U.S. is men's and women's. That's a mouthful. National team to break after that, and then our final predictions are just going to be 3 general predictions that we're kind of just pulling out of our elbow to talk about the whole world. Kevin, in terms of this, the questions that I'm going to ask is who the breakout performer is going to be for each of these teams, to the disappointing, the least inspiring performer, and a year from now, we're going to take our crystal ball and look 1 year exactly from now, the time machine. I'm getting that damn time machine built. We're going to see whether the fans are happy, whether they're sad, whether they're homicidal, whether they're suicidal. We're going to look at all of those different things there, Kevin. I'll start with the impact. Just go through those 3 questions, and then we'll have a little chat about it. Then we'll move to TFC, and then we'll move to the Whitecaps.
All right. So let's start with the Montreal Impact. What I think it's easy to look at is the Montreal Impact in 2017 is going to be a transition period. We're heading to the post-Drogba era. The post-Piatti era is in sight in 2015. Jeez, that's a blast from the past. In 2018 or maybe onwards, Piatti, I do not think he will be back. He will be here apparently this year if the offers from San Lorenzo or Boca doesn't go through for the Montreal Impact. So a few predictions we can have. Who will be the least inspiring performer for the Montreal Impact? If you're looking at trends for the club and the way they were going, a player that was really successful in 2017 and 2016 in some spurts, especially in the playoff, was Dominic Gaudreau. He was re-signed for the Montreal Impact, and I do believe is an important part. But when you look at least inspiring performer, I do think the last few months of 2017 might resemble what the last few months of 2016 in the regular season was for Dominic Gaudreau. Not necessarily easy. That's before his playoff run. So unfortunately, even though he's one of my favorite player to interview or to watch because of his attributes on his soccer pitch, Dominic Gaudreau for me will be the least inspiring performer, but the breakout performer. And that is if it goes through. It has been announced by multiple sources, including La Presse and other very mainstream sources. Dzemali, when he comes in June, if he comes in June, could have the potential of doing better than Nacho Piatti in his first few months with the Montreal Impact. And I do feel that Dzemali, Duane, will be the breakout performer for the Impact in 2017.
When you say breakout performer, are you talking like difference maker, take impact over the top breakout performer, or just becomes a fan favorite, makes the impact, equally good right now?
Jovinko to Toronto type of impact on the pitch. Jovinko, and like literally, I feel like Zamali will be a new type of Jovinko for the Montreal Impact. If he, yes, so I do feel that Zamali could be the difference in the Montreal Impact between top spot in the East, who knows, maybe another playoff run, and third and fourth. So the 4 months that he will play for the year this season, for the team this season, if he comes, might be the breakout performer for him.
Yeah, well, and I think this season is what matters. The Impact obviously got it rolling in the playoffs, but what was the difference? It was those 30 minutes of extra time, right? So you flip those games around and have a better regular season, and that's maybe the difference between the Impact and TFC this year. So certainly that is very interesting, Kevin. All right, that's in terms of the disappointment in Oduro, he's got a player that's been up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. His whole career seems to find a home in Montreal. So what does disappointing look like for Oduro this year, though? Like, does that mean he never really gets going like he's done in the past few years?
I do expect Montreal to change the way they approach going forward. They don't want to concede as much as last year. That was one of their downfall, or one of their biggest weakness is not necessarily able to keep the clean sheet when needed. When you have that one goal going ahead, they were scoring a lot of goals first this last season, the Montreal Impact, and for them to always concede like they did this year, they will have to do that. But if you assure the defense a little bit, you sacrifice a little bit of going forward. And Dominic Oduro was the one who was starting on his side often, just with the space in front of him and his speed was able to create something. I do feel now that going forward, it's going to evolve. And Montreal will try to control that ball going forward, to control that, not necessarily go from counterattack to possession, the other side of the spectrum. But I do feel they would have a little bit more control and keep the pace and control the tempo of a game, if you want to use that analogy. And Dominic Oduro, I think, will be a casualty of that change of mentality heading into 2017. I do feel with players, if it turns out to be true, like Ikoni and Zamali coming in, you do want to have a type of game where those players and those attributes can shine with Piatti, and those won't be on a counterattack. It will be on a more possessing, moving forward, pressuring, yes, but not as based on the counter as it was in the run of the playoff in 2016. So that's why I feel that Oduro might be that casualty in the offensive marks.
All right. And fair enough. Most of us from the outside look at Oduro and kind of get confused by him half the time anyway. So we'll see whether those turn out to be true. Let's move to TFC. In terms of the breakout performer, I'm going to cheat a little bit here because I could not decide between two of them. So I'm going to give two, which is, double your fun for the same money. It's not double your money, unfortunately. Patreon.com. Anyway, my one breakout, as I'm going to name a young Canadian, Jay Chapman. I think Jay Chapman, his improvement in training, his improvement in the limited playing time that he got last year has allowed TFC to make decisions like let a midfielder of Will Johnson's caliber go. I know that Johnson and Chapman aren't like apples to apples in terms of how they play in the midfield role, but they're both midfielders. They're both going to play a similar role. Their confidence, I believe, in Chapman is what there is allowing them to take Johnson's money and perhaps spend it otherwise. I think the other part of this breakout role situation is that the money that they're going to save from Johnson might allow them to add, quote unquote, a rental player in the middle of the season, which might be able to push them over the top. But I'm not going to be that cute about my next prediction. My other one that actually probably, if you forced me to pick between these two, I would pick Nick Hagelin. Nick Hagelin's already been breaking out in the last half of the season, but I think he's going to be, a 34-game starter, MLS all-star almost caliber defender next year. I just really see this kid finally having got his opportunity, has found his confidence, has found his game, has become one of the most dangerous set piece players in Major League Soccer over the last half of the season. And he was just a revelation to me and to many others in TFC's playoff run. And I think Nick Hagelin's just going to get better in 2017. And people might snuff when I say MLS all-star caliber, but I think that's a player that might have a chance to get in a conversation for something like that. A good, solid MLS lifer center back. They're hard to find. And TFC through patience, through sticking with the player, through hard times, has managed to find one. And my God, if only there were people 10 years ago screaming at them to do that. If only there was people out there saying that, you know what helps? Stability. If only that was something that someone that's podcasted for 8 years has been saying for years, TFC. Wait, I'm ranting now.
Talking about hard times, hard times. Hard times. Sorry to cut you in. Do you think Toronto will have some hard times in 2017?
Some problems. We talked off air a little bit about just the potential of them having a bit of a hangover effect at the start of the year. And I think that is something that they're really going to have to address in the preseason. The player that I'm most worried about, though, in terms of having a bit of a slip back is it's a player that I have trouble getting a handle on. I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine, for a couple nights ago by text message when her and I were talking about Jonathan Rosario and how we can't figure him out. And I love Jonathan Rosario. I watched this guy play for 2013. He was the one great spot in that otherwise bleak 2-year stretch was the emergence of Rosario. He is, statistically speaking, still amongst the top 10 midfielders in Major League Soccer in terms of passing accuracy. He's top 50 in the league in terms of key passes. So he does stuff that's really good. But yet, people, when they watch Rosario, they go, what's he doing there? And they can't really put a finger on it. He did have a couple goals late that is, undoubtedly the weakness of his game in the last few years, his ability to finish opportunities. But he still does frustrate people. And I could see if there's, especially, with Cooper coming in, sort of taking that more AMC role away, with maybe Chapman emerging, I could see Rosario being the odd man out. And that's unfortunate for a guy, I think. And I can't quite put my finger on why. Just like many people can't quite put their finger on why he's good, because he's this confusing player that way. He's kind of doesn't really have a natural role that I see other than a guy that maybe passes the ball to Michael Bradley. And is that a role that can't be replaced by something more dynamic, Kevin?
Well, that's a very good question, and it's going to be one that we will see unfold in front of our eyes. But one thing that worries me a little bit about Toronto, we talked about with Steven Sandler last week on our Christmas special, how for Toronto, the hangover might be something. It's something that was sort of a trend, Portland and other teams in recent years. But for Toronto, Duane, if you put yourself a year from now, what would be the main topic of Toronto FC? What will stand out in your mind of the last year, which is the next year of TFC soccer?
It's going to be a moment of either celebration or epiphany is what's going to be a year from now in TFC circles. I do really think it's an all the way up, all the way down kind of year for TFC. I could, sitting here today on January 3rd, 2017, I absolutely can see TFC winning the MLS Cup. I could see TFC winning a Supporters Shield next year. In fact, if you put a gun to my head and made me pick the Supporters Shield favorite, I'm going to pick TFC right now, just because they play in the East, just because they're coming through in the same way. They have more depth than anyone in the East, I think, and that there's going to be more points coming out of the East. But, and this isn't like a That's So TFC thing. That's speaking to some of the stuff that Kevin and I are talking about right now. I could also see them spiraling. I could also see Javenko coming back and still getting frustrated by the ground and getting frustrated by the fact that he's, maybe not getting the respect he wants anymore. Or maybe he's not getting when I say that, I mean in Italy. Maybe he needs to go back. Maybe he wants to go to 2018. I could even see Javenko in an absolute disaster scenario, forcing the hand to TFC and making them move him back to Italy in the summer. I could see that happening. I could see TFC missing the playoffs. I could see them having a disaster of a season. And I know that will amuse the hell out of a lot of Canadian fans that don't like them, but nonetheless, I could see that happening. So it's really an all the way up, all the way down kind of season for TFC. So it's either going to be like a parade, or it's going to be blow it up. That's kind of, I don't think there's an in between.
Speaking of,
sorry,
Duane, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kevin.
No, I was going to make a transition, so you go ahead.
Even if they do have a parade, there probably will be a bit of a blow-up happening, but we should probably move on to Vancouver now.
Well, just before we do that, let's take a quick break, Duane. We're up against the bottom of the hour. So let's take a quick break. Listen to someone talk about hard times before we come back with Vancouver and talk about their hard times.
Secondly, I want to thank Jim Crockett Promotions for waiting and taking the time, because I know how important it was. Starcade 85 it is to the wrestling fans, it is to Jim Crockett Promotions. And Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, with that weight, got what I wanted. Ric Flair, the world's heavyweight champion. I don't have to say a lot more about the way I feel about Ric Flair. No respect, no honor. There is no honor among thieves in the first place. He put hard times on Dusty Rhodes and his family. You don't know what hard times are, Daddy. Hard times are when the textile workers around this country are out of work and got 4 or 5 kids and can't pay their wages, can't buy their food. Hard times are when the auto workers are out of work and they tell them go home. And hard times are when a man has worked at a job 30 years. 30 years. They give him a watch, kick him in the butt, and say, hey, a computer took your place, Daddy. That's hard time.
And what was hard times in 2016 is watching the Vancouver Whitecaps bow out of the playoff even before coming in, even though a lot of expectations were on them. Duane, are the Whitecaps Ric Flair, and are the Whitecaps heading to more hard times in 2017?
Before I answer that, I just need to do one thing, Kevin. Woo!
You can't be talking about hot times without putting a little bit of Dusty Rhodes in your show.
All right, there you go. Kevin, of course, has a wrestling show. If you'd like to look on the Sports Podcasting Network, I do not, because all I could ever talk about was Ric Flair and wooing a bit. It wouldn't really add much insight. No, look, I think things are going to get worse before they get better in Vancouver. I do not like their current approach to roster building. I've talked at length about this for quite a while. I think that they need to open the piggy bank up a little bit, and that's easier said than done. I got that, but nonetheless, I just don't think that I'm seeing this idea, this MLS 2.0 idea that you can sort of find value in players and get a roster that's 1 to 24 kind of equal, that can go out and compete for a championship. I just don't buy it anymore. And this kind of idea that you should only be signing players from quote unquote value places is something that is being betrayed by the all the Italian signings that we're seeing coming in, by the fact that we are seeing bigger name players come in and have a major impact immediately. The Whitecaps, I think, need to change their approach slightly, and I'm not sure they're totally ready to do that, and I'm not sure they're totally ready to do that until they have a season of true disappointment. I think that they probably were close enough this year at times that they can justify in their mind that maybe it was just a slump. Watson didn't have a great year, or whoever didn't have a great year, and Laba certainly didn't have a great year. So maybe they can just recover from that and move forward. But if we're talking about the Whitecaps and my, to use the predictions that we have there in terms of the disappointing player of the year, I just mentioned him. I think Matthias Laba is a guy that maybe has peaked. He's still a solid player. I'm not trying to dismiss him. I'm certainly not trying to justify the trade that sent him to Vancouver. But I do think that maybe the days of Laba being the best defensive midfielder in Major League Soccer, as he probably was 2 years ago, are done. And if they're going to continue to sort of build ideas and tactics around the idea that he is the biggest and the best, kind of enforcer in the midfield in this league, then I think maybe they're going to continue to be disappointed, Captain.
Yep, and that's a very fair point. When I look in 2017 for the Whitecaps, you mentioned a disappointing player. I'll go with the breakout player. And, we have expected more of young players, of young Canadian going through the ranks of the Whitecaps, like the Tybert and others. But guess what? The next one, the new one, maybe the chosen one, Alphonso Davies, 16 years old now. If you're good enough, you're old enough. And I do feel that 2017 might be the year where he goes from playing a little bit of time with the team to actually being the team's best player.
Yeah, that's bold, certainly. But he's proven in the time that he's had in the last year that, as you say, if you're good enough, you're old enough. I think that with Davies, the plan at this point really should be to get him through another full season of Major League Soccer. You can't even really move him anywhere until he's 17 anyway. And I do think you're going to see this kid probably moved on somewhere bigger and better than Major League Soccer within the next 3 or 4 years. And we're, there also comes a point. There's a lot of, whoa, put the brakes on that happens when you're talking about Davies out there. And it's understandable. And we understand where those lessons are coming from and that they're coming from a good place for the most part. But I think this is also the year that we can start to have a little bit of expectation on him, that we can start to really, not demand, but watch for the improvements, watch for him to be following through in ways that are more than just flashes. I think that that's going to be key, because ultimately, as much as we're excited about his development, we were also excited by, Hanson Boatai just a few years ago and his performance in the Champions League, not the Champions League, the Voyageurs Cup. And we all know what's happened with Boatai, and it was because I think maybe he started to believe the press clippings.
Yeah, Hanson Boatai.
Yeah, exactly. That's in terms of what we think is going to happen with them in the year, Kevin. And I think we split maybe a little bit. And I mentioned mine off the top. I think that the Whitecaps are going to be worse in 2017 than they are in 2016. I don't think they're making the playoffs. In fact, I think that they may be battling with Houston down near the bottom of the Western Conference. And that's going to be, just like I said with TFC a minute ago, well, maybe an epiphany moment for the franchise, maybe a moment that they change direction, maybe even a moment that they move on from certain leadership personalities that have been dominating that club for a while.
Are you saying a clean sweep of the front office in 2017? I will go as far as saying in 2017, we might have a change of president and head coach for the Vancouver Whitecaps.
Yeah, certainly if they don't make the playoffs, I don't think there's much chance that Carl Robinson. Carl Robinson, I think, probably has a longer shelf life than maybe Lenarduzzi at this point. I think that they'd have to maybe start to look at Bobby at some point. They've always been reluctant to do so. He is part of the wallpaper there, but so was Mo Johnson in the early years of TFC, right? And eventually it got to the point where a dominating personality that has been the face of a franchise had to move on to get there. Because if the Whitecaps, Vancouver is a funny little market. If the Whitecaps struggle again, they're going to be streaking towards irrelevancy pretty quickly in that market. It's Canuck focused. It's Canuck centric. It's a very Canadian market that way. And if they don't, and even with the Canucks, if they're not doing well, they don't show up for those games either. And that's ultimately the president's job, is to make sure those kind of situations don't happen.
Look at BC Place. Like, never do we hear the how do you call this? The momentum of season ticket sale, of games that you open the upper bowl. You don't get that excitement. Okay, granted, they didn't get a CCL quarterfinals or something. It's coming eventually. But they didn't get like that great run in the playoffs like the Impact or Toronto, or that great moment that you fill a stadium with 60,000. But they have those type of stadiums. They have those type of potential. It hasn't happened. When they came into the league in 2011, Vancouver had a lot of momentum going forward. They had a potential. Oh, we're going to create big rivalries versus Seattle, Portland, and eventually Toronto. Toronto and Montreal have surpassed Vancouver, not just in tickets, not just in perception and the brand recognition and the outreach of the brand in industry terms, but they surpassed them in momentum and like the footprint of the market, of like the team in the market. I mean, Vancouver's been fledgling right now. They haven't been growing. They haven't been able to monetize that growth of the perception of the club like Montreal and Toronto had. And if in 2017 it continues to be that way, unfortunately, there's not a lot of things you can do but change who's in charge to make sure that that growth that you had since the beginning of 2011 when they got into the league is not all to do again.
Yeah, look, and it would be a shocking thing to happen. It would be the most shocking prediction we could make, to say that this might finally be the year that Vancouver brings someone else in to be the face of that club. But I do think that if there is a poor year, the potential of that happening grows greater and greater. And I know that, I know for a fact that there are a lot of fans in Vancouver that are cheering on this prediction. Maybe not so much they don't want to see the club fail, but they certainly do believe that Bobby Lenarduzzi is probably maybe past his shelf life out there. They respect him for what he's done for the game in the city. That's not the question here. It's what's happening. It's what have you done for me lately, really. And this is after one poor season. The Whitecaps have made the playoffs, did actually win a playoff round a year ago. So we aren't going to be too dramatic about this, but I just don't see a lot of movement there. And you're right. I mean, the talk
when you're talking about Canadian MLS teams and the success that they've had, it's really, you're talking about the two Eastern teams right now. And TFC, although, yes, you can look down your nose at what they did for 8 years, but what they've done the last 2 years is to make themselves arguably, amongst the top 1, 2, 3 most interesting teams in Major League Soccer in terms of the signing power and the financial power they have.
Right now, in the league,
Kevin.
if you're looking at the rosters of the clubs and the importance of the brands of each identity of each club and their outreach and their not just the outreach, but their influence on the market, on the media, on the entire continent. 2 out of the top 5 teams is Montreal and Toronto right now in the league, with Seattle, LA, and maybe depending of New York Red Bulls or NYCFC. But those are the big clubs in the league. Those are the big clubs that gathers the headline, that gathers the attention. Vancouver is not even close.
Yeah, they're just one of those teams. They're the third player in the Canadian rivalry, and they're the third player in the Cascadia rivalry. And that's maybe a bit harsh to hear if you're a Whitecaps fan, but I think if you're a Whitecaps fan with perspective, you'll understand that it's true right now, and they need to do something to get there. Something can be winning too, and maybe they can prove us all wrong and prove that the style that they're trying to win with can work. But without that, then we're just going to, I think, be a third wheel in and around.
All right,
Kevin, let's move past Whitecaps now, and we did want to get into the national team stuff a little bit really quickly. Look, the Canadian men's national team is very hard to talk about right now, but
there's no prediction we can make in 2017 that can actually become true, because they're not going to qualify for anything in 2017. We might actually, the only thing we can have is, hey, maybe we'll have a new head coach in 2017.
We could win the Canadian men's national team could win the Gold Cup. There you go. I'm not predicting that the Canadian men's national team is going to win the Gold Cup.
Me neither.
But that is really all that we have to play for. I will say this. I hope. I don't want to predict it. I hope that the Canadian men's national team gets out of the damn group at the World Cup. That at least would give me something to hold on to. In terms of breakout performers, and I'm going to say that we'll borrow the Whitecaps. He's still got work to do to become fully national team eligible, but maybe we can see Alphonso Davies get his full nationality capabilities in 2017. That might be something that could happen that would be exciting for Canadian men's national team fans. Maybe we could find another expat out there somewhere that could come in and sort of solidify this back. Maybe we can get Atiba to come play one last season through one last Gold Cup to give us something to hold on to. But really, there's a lot of just kind of staring into the abyss when you're talking about the Canadian men's national team right now, and that's why a lot of our focus in this country are on the club team successes. So we'll just move on there. I guess, Kevin, the youth teams, the under-20s qualify soon in Costa Rica. It would be nice to get back to an under-20 World Cup just to give Canadian fans something. So that's where my focus will be on. It's the same focus I had on after 8-1 was that, okay, you know what? I'm just going to focus on the youth teams. I'm just going to remember that it's a grind, and you got your women's teams coming in there too to, another World Cup cycle in a couple of years. So that's how you keep faith when it's this bleak. But in terms of immediacy, I don't know what more to say, Kevin. If you want to add something, go ahead. Otherwise,
well, it's not Canadian, and it's not even it's my little bits and bytes of prediction, put it that way, for 2017. All right, there's some Europe, there's some Canadian, so I'll start with the Canadian content here. Carl Laren is going to play in England in 2017, not for England, in England, eventually get transferred. That's one of my bold predictions for 2017.
Okay. All right, fair enough.
I have some more as well. Duane, that one's probably going to hit close to home for you. The Canadian Premier League, open parenthesis, working title, close that apartheid, will be announced in 2017.
That will be something that I damn well hope happens. There's a lot of people. All I can say on that front is that there's been a lot of people that are frustrated by the lack of quickness. But the fact that the news is getting out there, it means that there is pressure on them for them to get this announcement out there in some capacity. They don't want to start before they can start. And because they have to start at a level of, I don't know, strength is a hard, like a big way to put it, because I don't think they're going to start at a level of strength. They're going to always start with challenges, but they need to start at a place where there are less challenges than the least amount of challenges that they can possibly get to, right? So let's just keep our fingers crossed that it happens this year. And if you're listening out there, yes, we'll be the first to let you know if we hear anything. Kevin, finish your third one there, and then I'll jump in with a couple more thoughts, and we'll see where we're at.
I'll continue with Major League Soccer. There will be a new quote unquote Giovinco in Major League Soccer. Don't know which club. I cannot predict that quickly, but not a young DP as in the category of young DP, but a designated player between the age of 25 and 30 in the prime of his career, with maybe not the biggest name, but with the biggest contribution on the pitch, will show up in Major League Soccer in the 2017 calendar. They will come in and be able to be instrumental, influential, and almost MVP-like for a club in Major League Soccer. Giovinco was a pioneer, quote unquote. We will have the next level of that coming into the league in 2017.
All right. Here's my prediction on the U.S. Men's national team. I think that they are going to go through the playoff round to make the World Cup. I do think they are going to make Russia, but I do think they're going to finish fourth in the Hex. I think Panama, by the way, is going to be the team that the new team that makes it in from this region. I think that the Panamanians are ready to take that next step. I think that Bruce Arena will bring in some Major League Soccer standouts that a lot of people have been clamoring for to get into this team. And I do believe that Landon Donovan will get, if he plays club football, and that's the caveat right now, will get another look at with the U.S. men's national team, probably in a friendly, probably in a camp, which doesn't necessarily have that kind of pressure to see whether he fits back in with that group. So that's my prediction on the on the U.S. men's national team side. On the women's side, both Canadian and American, not a lot going on to predict about, but I do think that Christine Sinclair will continue to play well and will get closer and closer to Abby's goal record over the next year, to the point that more and more people are going to start talking about the potential of her becoming the all-time leading female scorer, which would then also, if you want to compare apples to oranges, would make her the all-time leading scorer in all international football. But that is a silly thing to compare because they're different games. However, I'll just leave that alone.
That's like saying that Anthony Calvillo is the best quarterback in the history of American football when he actually just played for the CFL, even though his stats are compared to the NFL. No, I know exactly what you mean. Here goes with mine. This one's going to go a little bit more in Europe, Duane. And it's not really a bold prediction, especially the way things stand today. Can't talk. It's now too late. Chelsea wins the Premier League this year.
Yeah, I think maybe that's a prediction that we've been making for the last few weeks. But yeah, it certainly does seem. The better prediction on Chelsea is whether they lose again the rest of the way. And the way that they're playing right now.
Will they concede a goal in 2017?
Yeah, they may not lose again this year. Kevin, I have a prediction that's not going to make our friends in Sacramento very happy. I think that Sacramento is going to continue to be overlooked in Major League Soccer expansion, even though they continue to have arguably the best expansion bid. This, I think, is going to lead to a lot of bitterness and resentment. And I think 1 year from now, a lot of people in Sacramento will be starting to give up on their MLS games, just like the people of Rochester did in the late 90s when they continued to get overlooked because there were just sexier places in the mind of the leagues. Think people. I can't talk today either. That I do have a cold in my defense. In the mind of the leagues, in the mindset of the league, that there were sexiest places for them to go. So I don't see good things for Sacramento. I hope I'm wrong on that, because I do think that they would make a wonderful MLS market based on the organic support they've created there. But I just don't think that's how Major League Soccer thinks right now. And that's my prediction there, Kevin.
I have a very bold one here. It's actually not that bold. The NASL will not go back to what it used to be just last year in 2017. I feel like we'll have a new type of structure for quote unquote the lower division of soccer in North America starting in 2017. Now they have moved away from the big name, the Peterson, the Wilt. They're all away from the NASL. The remaining owners are, this is not a prediction, this is actually reality. The new owners are looking to new ways and new possibilities for 2017. My prediction is the NASL as a league that's adversarial to Major League Soccer and USL. Their time is done. In 2017, we will have a different pyramid. Those 4 letters of that acronym, NASL, might be existing, but it won't be in an adversarial type of league like it used to be.
Fair enough. And I do think on an NASL front that there will be one more third kick at the can at someone trying to acquire the branding of the New York Cosmos and try for a third time. I don't necessarily think it will succeed at the same level, and I think that it will come in with people that are trying to use that brand to help a localized club be a little bit more successful rather than use that brand to build the time machine to 1978. I keep talking about time machines lately. It's a bit odd, but anyway.
Duane, do you have a time machine,
a
time machine fantasy that you actually want to use? Because it's been like 2 days now. You just keep talking about time machine. Did you watch all of Doctor Who yet?
Well, yeah, no, I've watched all. Oh, you mean all of it? Like all 50 years of Doctor Who?
No, just like
not watched
the
all
new
50.
ones, like the new series that just came out.
Oh yeah, I've watched every episode of the new Doctor Who 3 times. I've gone through the whole series 3 times. And I did watch the Doctor Who Christmas special, and I give it a good try, 7 out of 10. The whole Superman kind of thing there was a bit American for most people's tastes. I think that was trying to speak to the American audience. But
how did he not know that it was Clark Kent? Hasn't he watched TV? Did he read comic? Isn't it Doctor Who all knowing? What was going on there?
Yeah, exactly. I thought that the baddies were underdeveloped, so they didn't really make sense. The whole thing, it was really just about that dynamic between the Doctor and the superhero he created and the little love issue. But the red dress was lovely, so I'll leave it at that. A nice red dress on Christmas, we all do always enjoy. Doctor Who now has a history of girls in red dresses, so this is turning into to a blast right now. It's well enough alone there. No, we have no time machine technology that I know of yet, so we can't turn back the clock to fix anything at all other than to move forward, which is what we're going to do now. Any one last final prediction for 2017 before we say goodbye?
We'll have 2. There's going to be another Canadian team in MLS in 2017, the MLS Cup in 2017. You can figure out who I'm talking about, but it's not Vancouver. So there's that. And my other prediction is there will be a third scorpion kick goal. Well, technically they weren't in 2017. Giroud was, but not the other ones. But there will be another spectacular scorpion kick in 2017 that might be even better than Mkhitaryan because, well, he was offside, and a little bit better than Giroud because, well, he got lucky. Yeah. So I'm looking for another scorpion kick in 2017.
There'll be great goals all over this world. We'll be podcasting about them. My final prediction is that I increasingly believe that Atlanta United is going to launch as the most successful expansion franchise in MLS history. And I'm including the Chicago Fire in that. Yes, I know they won the MLS Cup in their expansion year, so you can't get better than that. But they won their MLS Cup in 1999, which was a different era. So to me, if the Atlanta United were to finish top 3 in the East and win a playoff round as an expansion team right now, maybe even get to a conference final, which I could see them doing based on what they're doing down there, then that would be something that I would consider to be, larger league, better players, better quality. I think that would be a better season. And I do think that they will launch better than Seattle, more to the point, which Seattle launched pretty well, and certainly better than Orlando and New York City. I see the most 2 recent launches, or the Union before that, which wasn't very good at all. So there you go. I think Atlanta United is the hype is real, is basically what I'm saying.
The hype is real, Duane. And until tomorrow for 11 a.m., Soccer Today, I hope you enjoyed our prediction show. Please do not write them down, and please do not come to us a year later saying you were wrong. Guess what? We know. And until tomorrow, have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.